Normally, our pastor, Tommy Ferris, would be up here at this time. Tommy has been sick nearly all week. Laura, the secretary, diagnosed what was wrong Wednesday, but Tommy didn't do anything about it until Friday evening. He stopped first at one of those drugstore places that they have a doctor or somebody. And they took his blood pressure and immediately told him to go to the emergency room. It wasn't high, it was very low. And there they said that he had the flu that was so bad last year. And I suspect he would be here preaching, except they said he was contagious and he would be out. In February, we had a man visiting us for the first time, several Sundays, named Frank Bendline. And he is an ordained American Baptist pastor. And I thought, what better way to welcome Frank than to ask him to preach with less than 24 hours notice. So I called, and Frank happily agreed to preach this morning. Frank is from Ohio originally. He, like Tommy, went to Judson College and then Northern Illinois University. He traveled with a chorus called Reach Out Singers for 4 years, did we say? 2.5 years. I mentioned the choir when he told me that. He graduated from North American Baptist Seminary at Sioux Falls, and he has preached in South Dakota, Iowa, and Maine. He returned to Ohio when his father became ill and he needed to be with family. Frank, we're awfully glad to have you with us today.
Now let me see if I can get this working right. Okay, because I'm not usually one who stays behind the pulpit very easily, so I thought I probably ought to have the roving mic today. Now, when I talked to Pat yesterday, she said, you can ignore what's in the bulletin if you want to as far as the scripture readings are concerned. And at first I thought, well, I'd like to kind of bring some continuity to this, but I thought, well, no, I don't think I want to preach on the same thing that Tommy would be preaching on, because if he's doing some kind of a series, I don't want to hone in on his territory there. Not that he would be jealous of that, of course, but I just decided that I would go my own direction anyway. So I have no idea where this is in your Pew Bible, so please forgive me. But I'd like to read from the book of John in the Newer Testament, chapter 7, the very end, verse 53 through 8:11. It's a very familiar passage of scripture that we have regarding a woman caught in a rather compromising situation. Then each went to his own house, but Jesus went to the Mount of Olives. At dawn, he appeared again in the temple courts, where all the people gathered around him, and he sat down to teach them. The teachers of the law and Pharisees brought to him a woman caught in adultery. They made her stand before the group and said to Jesus, "Teacher, this woman was caught in the act of adultery. Now, in the law of Moses commanded us to stone such women. Now, what do you say?" They were using this question as a trap in order to have a basis for accusing him. But Jesus bent down and started to write on the ground with his finger. When they kept on questioning him, he straightened up and said to them, "If any of you is without sinned, let him be the first to throw a stone at her. And again, he stooped down and wrote on the ground. At this, those who heard began to go away, one at a time. The older ones first, until only Jesus was left, with the woman still standing there. Jesus straightened up and asked her, "Woman, where are they? Has no one condemned you?" "No one, sir," she said. "Then neither do I." Jesus declared, "Now go and leave your life of sin." May God add his blessing to the reading of this word. I'd like to begin by telling a story that I always tell whenever I preach for the first time at any church. So if you've heard this before, that's too bad. But one of the nice things about being so mobile, as I have been throughout my life, is the fact that I can just keep on bringing out all my old stories because people haven't heard them yet. So I'm going to go with this one. It seems that there was this gentleman who had 3 sons, raising 3 sons by himself. And he was trying to do it in a very Christian way. So every Sunday, he would march his children, his 3 sons, into church, and they would sit in the same pew. And he gave each of them a quarter to put in the offering plate, because he thought it was very important to teach them that you gave to the Lord. And so every Sunday they would sit, and when they passed the plate, he would pass it on to his sons, each one. The oldest, the middle, and the youngest would put their quarter in the plate. He was very proud, and he thought they were doing very, very well. One Sunday, however, he noticed as the plate was passed, the oldest put his quarter in, the middle put his quarter in, and the youngest did not put his quarter in. Now, I'm the youngest in my family, so I can kind of relate to this. I can think of all kinds of things as a kid, when I was a kid anyway, what you could do with the quarter. And believe me, you couldn't do it today. But, when I first heard this, I thought, what I wouldn't have done for a quarter when I was a kid, But anyway, the father didn't want to make a scene there, of course, so he thought, well, okay, I'll talk to him after church and we'll get things straightened around. So the church service went on, the sermon was good, everything, and everybody is filing out, shaking the pastor's hand, "Oh, what a wonderful sermon," etc., etc. And the gentleman and his 3 sons came up, and the oldest shook the pastor's hand, and the middle shook the pastor's hand, and the youngest shook the pastor's hand, and as he shook the pastor's hand, slipped him a quarter. The pastor said, "Well, thank you, but what is this for?" And the kid said, "Well, Dad gave me that to put in the offering." "Oh, okay, well, that's fine. You could have put it in the plate, but I'll make sure it gets there." "Well, now, you see, Dad says that part of the offering goes for people who are poor." "Well, that's true. That's true. Well, I'll make sure that gets designated for the poor then." "Oh, no, you don't understand. You see, my dad says you're the poorest preacher he's ever heard." Now, I do that at my own peril, because one time I actually told that story and I got about 75 cents at the end of the service. Now, today, as I said before, we find a woman who is not in such a funny situation. She has not found herself in a comfortable situation at all. And we're not quite sure exactly how that happened. Because all we have is the word of the teachers and the Pharisees that she was actually caught in adultery. And the reason I say that is because, to my mind, as I think of this poor woman who is being paraded throughout the countryside as an adulteress, the first thing that comes to my mind is, where's the guy? What happened to him? I'm sorry, but adultery is not something that you can do by yourself. It's like tango, you have to have two. Some might say at least two, but we won't go there. So, you know, I throughout, every time I've read this passage, that's the first thing that I think of. Where is this guy? But, nevertheless, we still have her. And we have these people who are, I don't know how to describe them except to say that they're the most unfeeling people I have ever seen or heard of in my life. You know, when you think about Jesus' birth, there was a problem there. Because all at once Mary is heavy with child. And she's engaged to somebody else. And I'm sure there were some tongues wagging. And Joseph, before he's visited in the dream by the angel, decides, you know what? I'm going to take care of this quiet. Well, these people were not interested in doing anything quietly. These people were interested in making an example of somebody that they feel deserved it. These people are interested in setting a trap for somebody who is honing in on their territory. This Jesus, this person, this itinerant preacher who goes all around the countryside is really disturbing us. I mean, he's taking people away from us. He's got all these followers and everything. We need to show everybody just who this Jesus really is. And we're going to trip him up. That's what we're going to do. And so the situation is they bring the woman and they place her before Jesus. What you gonna do, Jesus? What you gonna do? Well, as I look at this particular piece of scripture, I'm reminded of the old good news, bad news jokes that they used to tell. Maybe they still do, but there was this one guy who loved to golf. Oh my gosh, he loved to golf. And every weekend he was out there golfing and golfing. One day he was out there and he was putting on the ninth green. And an angel of the Lord appears. Whoa, this is fantastic. And of all the questions that you and I might ask an angel of the Lord if he visits us, of all the questions he said, I've got to know, is there golf in heaven? And he says, well, I don't know if I'm supposed to reveal anything like that, to be truthful. So I'm going to have to go back and check with God and see if we're allowed to discuss this. Oh, that'd be great. I'll meet you here next week, same time, same place. Okay. So the next week came, he's out there on the ninth green, putting it in, and boom, there comes the angel of the Lord. And the guy says, well, is there golf in heaven? And he says, well, I got some good news and I got some bad news for you. Okay, well, what's the good news? The good news is, yes, there's golf in heaven. Oh, what a relief. Well, what's the bad news? The bad news is you tee off at 10. This thing here, I think, has a good news, bad news quality to it. Because for one group of people, it turns out to be bad news. And for one scared person, it turns out to be good news. So we're going to take the bad news first here. The bad news is the trap didn't work. Jesus didn't take the bait. These people had nothing to stand on. Now imagine master's of divinity. I've been in the temple every day. I've taught most of the people in this town what's going on. I know what Jesus should do. So, let's get this woman. Take her over there. Jesus, this woman, not so nice. She's been caught. What's she gonna do? Have you noticed Jesus didn't answer their question? I find that very interesting. Jesus meets us wherever we are, but he didn't meet them where they were at that particular point. They were wanting an answer, and he didn't give it to them. First, he just decided, you know what? I'm done with this. I'm just going to write in the sand here. We've got that down, writes in the sand. Well, that's not enough for them, of course, because when people are a little bit peeved, they don't put things down. That's the way I am. I've got to say, if I'm angry and we're having an argument and you walk away from me, I am going to follow you. And I am not going to put it down until this is settled. Of course, it's going to be settled when you agree with me because I'm always right. But that's okay. But, you know, that's just, people are like that, aren't they? And these people were definitely like that. Jesus is ignoring them. He can't do that. Come on, we need an answer. What's going on here? Okay, so they're getting flustered. They're getting frustrated. They're getting angry. And the tension is building in their minds. And of course, this poor woman isn't exactly doing very well either, I'm sure. So everything is just, the tension is mounting. Jesus doesn't matter. So he stands up and finally he says, okay. Now I'm going to paraphrase here, so please forgive me. And Jesus looks at them and says, tell you what we're going to do. Find just one person. Here's this big crowd of people. Find one person who has never done anything wrong. We'll let him throw the first stone. Just one person, that's all I need. Don't have to be everybody who has never done anything wrong. Just one person can throw that first stone and then boom, we're done. I have to say, I think I'd be tempted. But you know, Jesus just gives them the ultimatum and starts writing in the sand again. And we don't know what he was writing. I like to think maybe he was playing tic-tac-toe and he was winning all the games. But you know, there he is writing and leaving them to their own devices. Let them figure it out. He's not answered their question. He's given them a way to do what they think they want to do. And now it's up to them. Okay, so this day didn't exactly turn out the way I expected. I can hear a Pharisee think, well, maybe it's time to just come back a little bit. And pretty soon he's gone. And then another one sees him leave, and he thinks, you know, that's not a bad idea. And pretty soon, they're all scattered. And now we've come back to the two most important people in this story. And this is where the good news is. I can't believe the woman stayed. When everybody else ran, and here she is, because of what Jesus says later, I'm going to say, here she is in her sin. Again, because of what Jesus says later. And she doesn't run. I have to wonder why. Was it because she was dumbfounded? She knew the law. She knew what she deserved. She knows exactly what that crowd should have done to her. And if she didn't know, they were reminding her with every step of the way, I'm sure. We're going to get you, lady. We're going to stone you. You are going to be dead inside an hour. Let me tell you. And yet she didn't run away. That was the right thing to do. Jesus stood up. Look around him. Nobody here? Nobody's staying around to throw any stones at you? Nobody's going to condemn you? This little girl, this woman, I don't know how she got the gumption up to say, nobody. And Jesus looks at her. Now I want you to think about this for a second. Up until this point in the story, the only looks this woman has gotten have been disgust, disdain, hatred. Every kind of prejudice you can think of is going through the eyes of this crowd, directed at this one person. It's a wonder she could look at anybody. And yet, when Jesus looks at her, something inside Jesus touches something inside her and allows her to look back. Oh, what were those eyes like that she saw? I don't care what color they were. But what were the eyes of love like to look at that point? Unexpected love. Unexpected grace. Unexpected graciousness. To quote Amy Grant, eyes full of compassion, seeing every pain, knowing what you're going through, and loving you the same. Those were the eyes that woman looked at on that day. Now, I think we have a choice. Every day of our lives, we have a choice. We can look at Christ and see somebody that we want to work around. The Pharisees did. The Pharisees saw Jesus as somebody that they needed to work around and get out of the way. Or we can look at Jesus and see love and accept that love. I was only 16 when I became a Christian. And as far as I know, I'm the only person that I've run across, at least, that accepted Christ at it was a travel dog. We had a week of revival meetings, and that Friday night, the gentleman who was doing the revival meetings had taken a trip to the Holy Land, and so he was showing us all these slides of everything. It was just fascinating, because I had not grown up in a Christian home, but my grandmother was a very strong Christian, and she had told me all these stories of the Bible. And he kept on saying, and this is where this happened, and this is where that happened, and this is where this happened. And I'm like, wow! Those are real places. The thing that got me, though, was at the very end was just one last slide, and it was a picture of Jesus with his arms out. And his arms were out to me. And I saw those eyes of love looking back at me. You can't say no. When somebody loves you, when somebody really loves you, you know it. I remember a comedian used to say that Christians, when they, when they want to gossip, they share. And when they really want to be nasty about it, they share in love. And he used to say, I always think that's funny because if the next thing you're going to do to me is love me, why do you have to warn me about it? Well, that's the thing about Christ. He doesn't have to warn us about the love that we're going to receive. He just offers it. And all we have to do is receive it. That's where the good news comes in. The bad news comes in when you say, no. This isn't where we're going. This wasn't the purpose. Everything's wrong. Goodbye. But as soon as we look at those eyes of love, and we decide to take it, receive it, embrace it, then those eyes of love are good news. Just like a glass of water in a thirsty desert, those eyes of love can bring life. Sometimes in my life, and maybe you have seen this too, I've taken the love of God for granted. And coming to church, reading my Bible, doing the good things that we're supposed to do, becomes nothing more than a habit. And then somehow God steps inside of me and says, no, Frank, look into my eyes. And that love affair starts all over again. Accept the good news. Let Jesus love you. Amen. I'm not sure what part.